In this short video, I'm going to take you through how to answer the first question, which is always an interpretations question, in the Elizabethan section of paper 2 of AQA GCSE history. So you always get the same question. STEM, it always says the following: how convincing is interpretation A? And then it'll be about, in this case it's the Earl of Essex, but obviously it could be about anything. And that basically means is, do you think it's true? And in order to work that out, you're going to have to read the interpretation, which is a view, in this case of Essex, and you're basically going to have to do three things. One, what is it telling you about, in this case, the Earl of Essex? What is it telling you? Secondly, how can I use some of my contextual knowledge to judge whether it's true or not? And then thirdly, overall, do I find it convincing or not? That is really it. It's relatively straightforward if you think about it in those terms. You do not need to worry about the provenance. That is not important for this question. So that is not important. However, this is important. So the first thing we would want to do then is to look through it and to think to ourselves, well, what is this telling me about the Earl of Essex? So let's have a look and then let's try and pick some things out. Essex soon charmed the elderly queen. That seems like something that might be important about him. When he arrived at Elizabeth's court in his early 20s, he was tall, handsome and generous, but arrogant and reckless. So we can see then he was a favourite of hers. And it gives us some good and some bad, some positive and some negative qualities about him. Okay, little judgment on military expeditions. Elizabeth gave him titles and a monopoly which made him wealthy, so there we go, that's more that's linking to this idea of him being a favourite. What kind of qualities? Well, generous, for example, but also reckless. So you might say he was a man of contradictions, mightn't you? That's what it seems to be saying, contradictions here. He was vain and jealous, which made him easily offended and unwilling to be ruled by a woman. He failed, so vain and jealous, more negative qualities. He failed in Ireland, which he blamed on enemies at court. He then ignored the Elizabeth's orders by returning to England, where he plotted to seize the Queen and take control of the government. So he was also, there involved in a plot to overthrow the government. So I've picked out a few things. I've said, well, it tells us that he was a favourite of Queen Elizabeth. It says that, however, he had some good and some bad qualities, including being vain and jealous, and he was involved in a plot. So lots of things in there. Now, our second thing then is to say to ourselves, well, what do I know that would support what this says, or perhaps contradict it? So I'm going to start with this bit, favourite. So you would say, yes, one of the things it tells me is that the Earl of Essex was a great favourite, and we know that's true. We can use our knowledge. We know it's true because, we can say that Elizabeth liked being surrounded. She liked the company of these younger men, handsome men. She gave him the sweet wine monopoly, which made him rich. It refers to it there. But this upset other Privy Council members, not least, of course, Cecil. So there we go. I'm using my knowledge to explore this idea of him being a favourite. What about these things it talks about, his qualities, his good and bad things? Well, it says, for example, that he could be reckless. Well, that is really true, isn't it? And how do we know that's true? Well, do you remember the story, hopefully, about bursting in on Elizabeth while she was getting changed, which would be evidence to prove that he was rather reckless and didn't think through his actions. Okay, so again, lots of things there, our knowledge to prove that it's true. And then there's this last thing about plotting to seize the Queen. And we also know that, yes, that is true. Remember, he gathered 200 supporters, seized Privy Council members, but ultimately the plot was foiled because he was accused of treason, and then he was executed, wasn't he, in private because of his status. So lots of knowledge there to support the things in here. We don't have to, but we could contradict it if we like. So for example, it says he was so little judgment, one of these negative things on military expeditions, but he also had some success in Spain, so that wasn't entirely true. But when I look at this third thing, so I've said what it tells me, I've used some knowledge, and then I'm making a judgment. I think overall this is quite a convincing summary of Essex, who was very popular initially, but who lost his popularity because of his reckless personality and his inability to do the things that the Queen had asked him to do, and in the end he lost patience and with nothing left to lose attempted to seize control of the government. So I think this is. So those are the three things. So what would that look like? I'm not going to write this all up now, but if I can just give you a sense of what it would look like to me, I would want to be saying something like, if I'm thinking of sentence starters, the interpretation suggests Essex was a favourite of Queen Elizabeth. It calls him charming and tells us he was rewarded with titles and wealth. And then I would use some knowledge. This is true as Queen Elizabeth awarded him the sweet wine monopoly, and made him a Privy Council member. It also calls him reckless. This is also true as he stopped being a favourite when he made a deal with Irish rebels and returned to England and burst in on Queen Elizabeth when she was getting ready, something like that. Now, you see what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to refer to the source, but then I'm trying to use my knowledge. Now, I might continue to do that, but remember, at the end, I would want to say something like, overall, I do find this interpretation convincing because, and then I would want to give my summary, and I won't do it here because we're running out of time and I don't want this to go on any longer, but I would want to be able to say the pick out that he was a favourite, for example, but his character and his failures meant that he lost that position. Remember, final point, let's just go over it again one more time. What does it say? What contextual knowledge do I have, and what is my judgment about this source? And that's it.